Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about the tiers as I see it going into the season for the Big 12. It's going to be all over the place. You can break them up however you want, as far as I'm concerned, in this conference. It is going to be crazy. There's going to be a team that comes out of nowhere, and it might just be a team that I just said is probably not in the race. But at the end of the day, we'll see how all of this unfolds. I want to get into some players to watch. I think there's so many interesting players in this conference, even in the teams that I don't think will have a ton to say about this conference. I think they have some really, really interesting guys to talk about. So let's go ahead and jump into this and let's break it down. Let's start with Arizona here, and a team that probably won't factor in too much, but Ishmael Mahdi is a very interesting running back coming over from Texas State, had 991 rushing yards a year ago, really shifty, really fun, a little bit undersized, I believe like 5'8", 180, so definitely not a big back by any means, but he's very speedy, absolutely can be someone that has some of those chunk plays for the Arizona offense, maybe becomes a good pass catching option for Noah Fafita. It'll be an interesting guy to watch this season. I think very, very talented and absolutely someone that made the jump up to the Power 5 from the Group of 5 and can make some noise this year. And then Tia Savea is a very interesting guy to talk about. He was at Arizona, actually went to Texas in that huge, a ton of big of defensive tackles found their way to Texas last year after Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy moved on. Tia Savea never really found his niche. He only had 2 tackles a year ago, was obviously in a stacked room with guys like Alfred Collins and Bill Norton and all of those guys that Texas had a year ago. So not all that surprising, but he is now back at Arizona. He found his way back, and hopefully he can kind of tap into what he had going in 2023, which is a very, very good season where I think he had 3.5 sacks, was really putting together a very nice campaign. Hopefully he can get back to that level for Arizona this year. Arizona State, their cross-state rivals. Kanye Udoh is one of the better kept secrets in the entirety of college football. Now, people that are really locked into transfer portal stuff and was really locked into Army a year ago know who this guy is. Had over 1,000 yards a year ago, 10 scores. I think he's a household name by the end of the year. Obviously, replacing Cam Scatabo is going to be as hard as replacing just about anyone in the entire country. This is about as good as you're going to do. He is a very, very physical running back, has plenty of good long speed, and then you add him with a guy like Kason Brown. I think they're going to make some noise. I love Kanye Udoh. I think he's a household name by the end of the year. I think he makes play after play for this Arizona State team, and not that he totally makes people forget about Cam Scatabo. I still think they take a step back running the ball, but I think this guy makes that as minimal of a step back as you could possibly hope for. And then Xavier Alford. We talked about him earlier in the show. He is the leader of this defense, had 2 INTs, 5 pass deflections, 85 tackles a year ago. This could be the Big 12 defensive player of the year. He has all the ability in the world. Another guy that came over from Texas to Arizona State, which they have a lot of those guys, it seems, which is not a bad strategy by any means. Very talented kid, has really gotten comfortable in this defense, and is absolutely someone that could make a whole lot of plays down the stretch and really improve a defense that was a little bit up and down at times for Arizona State. I think this is a huge reason they could take a step forward in that department this year. Then you got Baylor, and Bryson Washington has to lead the way. He is probably, Robertson might be a little bit better, but he is one of the better offensive players on this team. He had over 1,000 yards a year ago, 12 touchdowns. Dawson Pendergrass is out for the season. At least that's what it seems to be right now. A lot is going to be put on this kid's shoulders, and I think he can handle it. He's a very, very talented running back, one of those guys that can just bulldoze through you and then pretty much break off a 50-yard run the next play. Very talented kid, and absolutely will have plenty to say for this Baylor offense. And then Calvin Simpson-Hunt is a very interesting guy. Only has 1 tackle from a year ago, but was a 4-star out of high school, comes over from Ohio State. I think he just needs playing time. He's a very, very talented, very instinctual player. It sounds like he could be playing safety for them and not corner, so that'll be an interesting thing to watch. But he's a very, very talented kid, and I think gives an immediate boost to that back end that really did struggle at different times last year. BYU, it's got to be Chase Roberts. It's got to be the guy that gives this quarterback as good of a chance to succeed as anyone. Obviously, LJ Martin in the backfield is going to be plenty huge as well, but Chase Roberts, 52 catches, 854 yards, and 4 scores a year ago. He's got to be the security blanket. He's got to be the guy that makes this quarterback maybe look a little bit better than he is, or at the very least, helps him get comfortable early on in the season and allows him to become the player that he can be throughout the season. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. I think when it comes to wide receiver talent in this conference, very few guys outrank this guy. Very, very talented, has some great speed, is very long and physical. I think he could be a huge player for them, and frankly, I think he might just have to be. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to have to play some really good defense as well, and Tanner Wall is going to be a huge piece of that. 53 tackles, 3 INTs, a pass deflection a year ago. I think they're going to have to be elite on that back end. I think they're going to have to give some short fields to this quarterback, to this offense, and allow them to make the most of it. They did a really good job of that a year ago. I think Tanner Wall and that group is going to have to do plenty more of that this upcoming year, because I don't necessarily think they're going to outscore people to oblivion in this upcoming year. But we'll see what happens. I might be a little bit too low on BYU right now, but Tanner Wall and Chase Roberts just got to be superstars this year. For Cincinnati, it's really interesting. Thought about putting Evan Pryor on here. Absolutely is going to be a piece for them. But Cyrus Allen is a really interesting wide receiver. Went to A&M a year ago, only had 18 catches, 269 yards, but had 778 the year before that, I believe at South Alabama. I could be mistaking him for someone else. Apologies if I am, but very, very talented guy. I think he just needs an opening, needs to stay healthy, and I think he's going to be maybe the go-to guy in this offense. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit more run-heavy than some of these other teams, but I think they have every ability to get upfield, and Cyrus Allen's going to have plenty to do with that. And then Dante Corleone, one of the coolest names in the entire sport, one of the best defensive tackles in the entire sport, and had some blood clot problems going into last year, really had to overcome that kind of in a hurry as they were getting ready for the year, but had 26 tackles, 3.5 sacks. If he's fully healthy this year, he should be incredible for this team and be one of the reasons that maybe, let's say, an Iowa State comes to town and they can't throw the ball all that well, so they're trying to run it, and they're just running into big number 2 over and over and over again. So I think Dante Corleone's about as good of a football player overall as you're going to find in this conference, and Cincinnati needs him to be huge if they're going to win some of those big-time games that have kind of eluded them in the past. Moving forward to Colorado, Michael Welch has to hit. Michael Welch has to be a big-time player, a running back coming back for his sophomore season. Had 186 yards and 4 scores a year ago. He was the most impressive running back to me. There were a couple of guys that did some nice things for them throughout the season, but when Michael Welch had the ball in his hands, it just felt like everything moved a little bit smoother for them. He's got to hit big this year, because if they can't run the ball this year, you're putting a lot on the shoulders of a kid like Juju Lewis that's coming in maybe making his first start, or Caden Salter that has been known to turn over the football quite a bit. So I think you have to be very careful with this one. You have to be able to run the football this year. Obviously, the offensive line is going to have plenty to do with that, and I have my fair share of questions there, but Michael Welch has to be a big piece of this offense, or I think it's going to be a really big-time boomer bust offense. They hit a big-time 60-yard touchdown, and then they throw 2 picks in a row in the next 2 series. So they're going to have to be more dynamic on offense this upcoming year, at least more multiple, I should say, on offense in this year, and I think Michael Welch is the key to that. On the defense side of the ball, DJ McKinney is a very, very good player. Probably the best player on this defense. 61 tackles, a forced fumble, 3 INTs, and 8 pass deflections a year ago. He's going to have to hold it down, especially with the loss of Travis Hunter. You don't necessarily have as many security blankets around you. You don't have that one side of the field totally shut off so you can play more guys to your side of the field. He's probably going to be left alone quite a bit on the outside, and he's going to have to be able to really step up. And also, he could very well slide into the slot and play a couple of games at the kind of star nickel position, and that's a very tough position. So it's going to be interesting to watch this guy go. Him and Preston Hodge is a very good duo they have at cornerback, and I think if TJ McKinney can take another step forward, maybe this defense is a little bit better than I'm expecting right now. Moving forward to Houston, Tanner Koziel had one of the weirder off seasons. He was a guy from Ball State, was an 839-yard guy, 8 touchdowns from a year ago, transferred up to Wisconsin for about a week and a half, and then found his way back down to Houston, a very, very talented kid. One of those guys that I think is one of the best tight ends in the entire country. I think he's going to be probably the main target for Connor Wegman. They have some other guys like Stephon Johnson that will absolutely factor in there, but Tanner Koziel is a very, very good player, and I think he's going to make tons of plays for this team, especially in a Willie Fritz offense that loves a good tight end. I think he's going to be a big-time piece for them. And then Jordan Allen comes in from LSU, a very talented four-star out of high school. He only had 6 tackles a year ago. Obviously, LSU had their fair share of problems on the back end a year ago, but I think you come into Houston, you're obviously going to get a little bit more playing time, and I think he can make the most of it. Obviously, has not quite hit the talent level that was dubbed for him coming out of high school, but I think he can probably make it happen this year. At the very least, can be a big-time player and a big-time leader on the back end for Houston. Iowa State. They lost 2 big-time wide receivers. I think they replaced them with a very good wide receiver in Chase Sewell. 34 catches, 678 yards, and 3 scores a year ago for Eastern Carolina. This kid can play. There's no doubt about that. He can absolutely be the number 1 guy on this offense going into this year. I think he has all the ability in the world. The problem is he's going to have to pick up quite a bit of slack. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel are not replaceable guys by any means. So Chase Sewell is going to have to be even better than he was a year ago at Eastern Carolina, with a little bit better competition right across from him. And then Jontez Williams, the guy he's going to be practicing against a lot in camp, the safety that had 46 tackles, 4 INTs, and 5 pass deflections a year ago. I think Iowa State's going to be a team that's probably going to need some short fields. I don't think they're going to be a bad offense by any means, but I do think they're going to be a run-heavy offense that probably could work with some... Just give them some short field from time to time. Allow that defense to give you some openings in. I think Jontez Williams might be the leader in that group of giving you chances on offense for those short fields. So it's going to be interesting to watch Iowa State, especially in just about 10 days here, 11 days here, go to work. But Jontez Williams and Chase Sewell have to make an impression right away this season. Moving over to Kansas, they went into the portal and got quite a few guys. Emmanuel Henderson has to be the number 1 guy in this wide receiver room. I think they have some other really talented guys. I think this is the biggest freak show, I should say, of the group. 4 catches, 82 yards a year ago for Alabama. He's really fast. He can absolutely fly. If you can get this guy the ball in this guy's hands with space in front of him, he's going to make a lot of guys miss. And obviously, at Alabama, it's going to be really hard to get that to happen the way that you want it to, especially in those wide receiver rooms. So I think he's going to get a ton of targets. I think he's got to be a player that shows up for Kansas, or it could be kind of a weird year for the Jayhawks once again. And then Joseph Sipp Jr. is a guy coming over from Bowling Green, 79 tackles, 7 sacks. He's just a freak of nature. He's one of those guys that you turn on a G5 game and you're thinking, how is this guy not on the Power 4 roster? Well, now he is. He's a very, very talented kid, kind of moves all over the place, plays a little bit of that edge rushing type style, but can step inside and make some really, really good plays at middle linebacker as well. So very talented kid. Cannot wait to see him on a little bit bigger of a stage than he was before. Their cross-state rivals, Kansas State, Jace Brown's a beast. He's one of the best wide receivers in this entire conference, maybe even second now that I think about it, but I'll have to do a little bit more digging there. He had 47 catches, 823 yards, 5 touchdowns a year ago. He's got to be huge this year. I think they're going to run the ball. They're going to be a run-first team with Avery Johnson, with Dylan Edwards, with Joe Jackson. Jace Brown's got to be the difference maker on the outside, and he has been the last couple of years. They haven't quite been able to put it together around him, but if he gets a couple of guys to just go 400 yards, 500 yards, and then he can bounce for a 1,000-yard type season. Maybe that's a little bit lofty for Kansas State, but at the end of the day, I do think he has a ton in the bag that he can really, really unlock this year. Then Austin Romaine, one of the best linebackers you'll find in the entire country, probably will be on the short list for the Buckets towards the end of the year. 96 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 forced fumbles a year ago. This guy's an animal in every sense of the word, and he's absolutely going to be someone that needs to play huge for this team. The back end of that defense is questionable. I think they have some talented guys, but definitely have some questions to answer. I think if that run game, that front seven led by Austin Romaine can be really locked down, they're going to have much more ability. There's no doubt about that, and he is going to be a huge piece of just this defense working. Definitely the green dot guy for this team, and will be the leader of this team probably as a whole going into this season. Oklahoma State, Trent Howland has to be nervous about the shoes that he is filling with Ollie Gordon moving on. Obviously, last year was one to forget for Ollie Gordon, but Trent Howland came in at time to time, had 230 yards and a touchdown a year ago. He's going to have to be huge. There's no two ways about that. They have a quarterback coming in that has not played a lot of football. They don't have a ton of great weapons, especially after losing Deshaun Stribling to Ole Miss in the offseason. He's got to hit. He's got to be a big-time player for them because they're going to have to be able to run the ball well if they're going to want to do just about anything in this conference. Then you got J.K. Johnson coming in from LSU, another guy that just didn't quite have it at LSU. There was a lot of different stuff that kind of played into that, but is a very talented kid. 3 tackles a year ago. I think he's someone that can make a big-time jump this year and probably needs to. If Oklahoma State, again, is going to do anything of substance this year, these two guys probably have to be big-time players for them. Moving on to TCU, if you don't know the name Jordan Dwyer, I totally understand, first of all, but you should know that name. He had 1,192 yards a year ago, 12 scores at Idaho. This kid can play, and I understand he's coming from the FCS level all the way up. I still think he can be the number 1 wide receiver for this team. Eric McAllister will have plenty to say about that, but I do think this is a player that can make all types of differences for this team. Then you got Nnamdi Obiazor, but linebacker, very talented, 81 tackles, 2.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and an INT a year ago. This guy's the leader of this defense, and he's got to be. Him and Bud Clark are the two guys that everyone turns to in practice and follows by example. He's a huge player for this team, and especially if he can get after the passer just a little bit more this year, I think this TCU team has every ability to win this conference. Moving forward to Texas Tech, Coy Eakin is a very interesting guy here. We're talking all about the transfers that have been brought in, and can Barry Morton put it together? Can they replace Taj Brooks in the run game? Coy Eakin's a really good wide receiver. 49 catches, 652 yards, 7 scores a year ago. He can make a lot of big-time plays for this team. They're reintroducing Micah Hudson after a brief hiatus in the offseason, another kind of bouncing around the portal type guy. But Coy Eakin could very well be the number 1 wide receiver on this team this year. A lot of confidence between him and Baron Morton, and he's got to be a difference maker. I think when you open up the rest of this offense, it's probably got to be Coy Eakin to do so. And then Cole Wisniewski is another guy coming over from North Dakota State at the safety position. Very experienced guy. 50 tackles, a forced fumble, 8 INTs, and 5 pass deflections a year ago. This guy can play. There's no two ways about that. He has every ability in the world to make some really special things happen. I think he's going to be a huge player for this team. Now, can he be the big-time player that they might need him to be on the back end and make some of those huge plays that he made for North Dakota State a year ago? I don't know. It's a big-time jump, but at the end of the day, I do think he has all the ability in the world and will definitely be a huge help in the run game. UCF, one of the worst teams in this conference, but love Jaden Nixon. Jaden Nixon comes in from Western Michigan, had 919 yards a year ago, 12 scores. Very, very talented kid. A little bit undersized as well, but shifty, kind of like an RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey was a little bit bigger, but at the end of the day, one of those guys that can hit some big-time, 65, 75 type yard runs that really take the top off a defense and maybe give UCF a big-time win sometime throughout this season. And then Sencire Edwards coming in from Pitt, 17 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 pass deflections a year ago. This guy's got to hit. I think when you talk about UCF this year, it's going to come down to hitting some of those big-time plays, whether it's in the run game or the pass game, and then getting after the quarterback in a way that maybe we're not expecting right now. And Sencire Edwards probably is going to have to lead the way in that respect. It's one of those teams that is riding an absolute tightrope if they're going to do anything special this year, and I think these two guys have to be a huge part of this team this year. Utah brought in a very good player from New Mexico that it was not named Devin Dampier. They brought in Ryan Davis, the wide receiver, 747 yards a year ago, 3 touchdowns, a guy that can make all types of plays around the field. And they have other guys to go along with him. I don't necessarily think he has to be the number 1 guy for this team. I think he very well could be. He's a very, very talented guy, absolutely someone that runs routes incredibly well, and I think him and Devin Dampier have obviously a good rapport about them from their time at New Mexico. I think he's going to be a huge player for Utah. And then Teo Johnson's incredible. He's one of the best DBs in the country, had 70 tackles, an INT, 4 pass deflections, a forced fumble a year ago. this kid's going to be awesome. And there's going to be so many incredible players on this defense for Utah, but I think this is the guy that might make the most highlight plays. I think he's going to make number of plays throughout the season that a lot of people that change the trajectory of Utah's games, of Utah's season, and maybe just puts them in a playoff type situation. But very talented kid. Cannot wait to see him explode on the national scale this year. And then West Virginia, another team that's walking a tightrope. Jaheim White's awesome. He is absolutely incredible a year ago. 845 yards, 7 touchdowns. One of those guys that I think can take a huge leap in the Rich Rod offense. The only problem is it goes very quickly. If he's not fully conditioned, they're going to be rotating quite a few guys in, and it doesn't sound like they have a lot of guys to rotate in. So he's going to get quite a bit of work probably early on in the season. We'll see if he can hold up to all that noise. And then Fred Perry, coming over from Jacksonville State, is a very talented safety. 109 tackles a year ago, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 INTs. This could be a guy that comes up from the group of 5 level and shocks a lot of people in the Big 12 this upcoming year. I really like this kid, and I think he can make some noise in 2025. Overall, I think when you look at the Big 12, there's going to be a lot of unknowns. There's going to be a lot of unknowns in the Iowa State wide receiver room, in the Arizona State running back room. There's a lot of different moving parts in this conference. There's a lot of really talented transfers coming in, either from bigger schools or from Army or from FCS or from Group of 5. They're coming from all over the place, and I think there's a lot of really, really good diamonds in the rough. My favorite, personally, is Jordan Dwyer. I think the wide receiver out of Idaho is going to be an absolute star for TCU this upcoming year, and I think he might just be maybe the transfer of the year in this conference. But we'll get to that in the next one. Actually, don't even have him picked for my transfer of the year, but we got superlatives, my full conference prediction, my championship pick, my champion. It's very, very tough to put this thing together, but at the end of the day, I'll make all my picks right after this, so stick with us.